The last episode, Volume 12, ended with the convocation of the Second Duma and the victory for a broad left coalition. As you might expect, such an outcome was incompatible with Prime Minister Pyotr Stolypin's designs for his own reform. Stolypin blamed the socialist ministers for preparing an arm rising, and when the Duma failed to exclude them, he had the legislative body dissolved, him and the Tsar. To avoid another radical victory, Stolypin and the Tsar changed the electoral law in favor of landowners and urban property owners. So, Volume 13 begins with this fact and the emerging debate within social democracy and the Social Revolutionary Party about whether to boycott Third Duma. In Against Boycott, Lenin makes one of my favorite arguments. He says that in order to assess the question, we must consider the role that boycotts play in the past and consider the circumstances which the strategy was effective. For example, if you remember the Beligan Duma from a previous episode, Lenin says that that was a different circumstance. He writes, all boycott is a struggle not within the framework of a given institution, but against its emergence, or to put it more broadly, against it becoming operative. Thus, boycotts resist the emergence of institutions, not struggle within its existence. The goal is to weaken the regime to the point where it can't set up the institution that it wants to. He also provides an illustrative explanation of Marxism's position on compromise, saying that Marxism does not always fight against compromise, but can if circumstances are right. As a historical theory, Marxism confronts the zigzags of time through building the new by confronting what existed before it. Lenin's problem with the boycott at this moment was that the proletariat of Russia, exhausted after the events of 1905, seemed to be entering a period of decline in interest. To call for a boycott seemed not only unnecessary but inappropriate at a time of waning interest. In the Third Duma, Lenin makes the argument that although a minority, the few social democrats in the grossly distorted Duma should propose democratic legislation publicly so that if liberals don't back it, they will be exposing themselves. In the largest work in this volume, the Agrarian Program of Social Democracy and the First Russian Revolution 1905 to 1907, Lenin seeks to formulate the agrarian program after years of changes since its last formulation. The gist of the long piece is that the liberal reformist approach and the socialist revolutionary approaches are either ignoring the social aspects of the peasant question or outright utopian. He emphasizes the necessity of expropriating the land from big landowners without compensation, which would empower the peasantry to join the revolution and move toward the transition to socialism. This work should be understood within the context of Prime Minister Pyotr Stolypin's agrarian reforms. The reforms start to abolish the obshchenia system that kept peasants bound to the land through the institution of the mir, or the commune, which owned the title to the land as opposed to individual landowning. Stolypin wanted to do away with that system and believed that allotting peasants their own parcel of land through a new peasant land bank lending system would create a profit-driven peasant class. Sounds all right, but the problem, as Lenin saw it, was that the lending system was predatory and that these reforms mostly affected state peasants and land in European Russia, but did nothing to break up the large privately owned latifundia. These had to be seized and redistributed outright. The last 100 or so pages of this volume contains mostly small articles and letters, of which my favorite, a letter to A.M. Gorky, is of particular interest. Gorky was a famous Russian revolutionary and writer who, in 1905, after participating in the Moscow uprising, fled to Finland before being sent to the United States by the Social Democratic Party. In the letter, Lenin describes what he sees as an emerging split among Bolsheviks over the question concerning art and philosophy. It seems to him that many people, such as Bogdanov, Lunacharsky, and Gorky, are striving to preserve some sort of Kantian metaphysics in their understanding of Marxism. Lenin admits that questions of philosophy will always be a part of Marxism, but that such questions that threaten to split the party should be excluded from the pages of Proletari, that is, the party's political organ. In Happening to the King of Portugal, Lenin argues that the bourgeois press really exposed itself in the way that it sensationalized the assassination of King Charles I in Portugal, and how the press opportunistically covered it, despite the fact that the king was an adventurer and an oppressor. Finally, in Lessons of the Commune, Lenin makes an important point for our own time, that the fatal mistake of the communards in 1871 was to combine patriotism with socialism. Thanks for listening. Until next time.